In Morocco's economic capital, Casablanca, there stood a man whose influence was so vast that his name alone could open borders, silence boardrooms, and bend governments into negotiation. His name was Hassan El-Mansouri, a self-made multi-billionaire who rose from a modest childhood in Fez to become the owner of one of North Africa's most powerful conglomerates. His empire spanned real estate, shipping, oil logistics, technology, and international trade, with headquarters rising like a glass fortress in the heart of the city. Employees spoke of him with reverence and fear, for Hassan was known to reward loyalty generously and crush betrayal without mercy. Yet behind the sharp suits and armored convoys was a man who believed true wealth was not money, but legacy. Every decision he made revolved around one question: who would protect what I built when I am gone? Hassan had only one child, a son named Adam El-Mansouri, whom he raised with strict discipline rather than indulgence. While Adam grew up surrounded by luxury, his father ensured comfort never turned into entitlement. Adam attended top schools abroad, earned a degree in business and corporate ethics, and returned home sharper than most executives twice his age. But Hassan was not impressed by certificates. He believed character revealed itself only under pressure. Adam was calm, observant, and unusually quiet for someone born into unimaginable power. He listened more than he spoke, watched more than he judged, and questioned everything, even people who smiled at him. Hassan noticed this and smiled inwardly, knowing his son might be ready for something no textbook could teach.
On a cool evening overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, Hassan summoned Adam to his private study. Without ceremony, he placed a folder on the table. Inside were documents transferring full ownership and control of El-Mansouri Group to Adam. No celebration, no applause, just silence. Adam's heart pounded as he realized what lay before him: billions in assets, tens of thousands of employees, power capable of shaping nations. Hassan leaned back and spoke calmly. I am going on vacation. When I return, I want to know one thing: who in that company deserves to stand beside you? With those words, Hassan stood, embraced his son once, and walked away, leaving Adam alone with the heaviest responsibility of his life. The very next day, Hassan boarded his private jet and disappeared from Morocco, leaving executives stunned and Adam officially seated as chairman. Managers lined up with rehearsed smiles, exaggerated respect, and forced loyalty. But Adam saw through it all. Compliments felt hollow, handshakes felt calculated. He sensed something dangerous beneath the polished floors: false loyalty. Sitting alone in his office late at night, Adam stared at the city lights and asked himself a brutal question: who here respects me because of who I am? And who respects me only because of what I own? That night, an idea formed in his mind, bold, risky, and unthinkable for a man in his position. Adam decided to erase his identity. If power blinded people, then power must disappear. He would test the company not from the top, but from the bottom. No titles, no name, no privilege. He would apply as a janitor in his own company, a role invisible to executives, vulnerable to abuse, and stripped of dignity. That was where truth lived. As dawn broke, Adam removed his luxury watch, folded his tailored suit away, and dressed like an ordinary worker. Looking at himself in the mirror, he whispered, "Now I will see who you really are." And with that, the owner of a multi-billion-dollar empire stepped into the shadows of his own kingdom. Adam applied under a false name and was hired within days, unnoticed among dozens of low-level workers. No one recognized him. No one questioned him. The same executives who bowed before him days earlier now walked past him without a glance. His uniform was rough, his hands quickly blistered, and his days filled with endless commands shouted by people who believed power lived in their job titles. Clean faster. Don't stand there. You janitors are useless.
Adam swallowed every insult silently, observing faces, remembering voices, and noting who enjoyed humiliating him. The experience shocked him, not because of the labor, but because of the cruelty delivered so casually. Managers treated him like trash, backing others as if he were invisible. Some deliberately spilled coffee just to watch him kneel and clean it. Others mocked his accent and laughed when he kept his head down. Adam realized something terrifying. Power revealed ugliness. People who smiled in meetings became monsters when they thought no one important was watching. Every insult burned, but Adam forced himself to endure it, knowing every word spoken was evidence. He was no longer just testing the company. He was uncovering its soul. Among all that cruelty, one person stood out. Her name was Lila. She worked in administration, known not just for her striking figure and confident presence, but for her kindness. She noticed Adam on his first week, noticed how others spoke to him, noticed how he never responded with anger. She greeted him politely, brought him food during breaks, and defended him openly when co-workers insulted him. "He's human like you," she once snapped at a supervisor, shocking everyone. Adam was stunned. In a building filled with cold hearts, she was warm, fearless, and genuine. Lila's kindness was not subtle, it was brave. She risked her reputation to protect someone society had already dismissed. When others laughed, she stood firm. When insults flew, she answered calmly. Adam watched her closely, not just with gratitude, but with admiration. She did not know who he was. She expected nothing. That made her different. That made her dangerous, in the best way. For the first time since his father left, Adam felt hope. Not everyone was rotten. But fate was already preparing its trap. One afternoon, panic swept through the company. Money had gone missing from a high-level office. Accusations flew, whispers spread, and soon all fingers pointed in one direction: the janitor, Adam. He was summoned by management, surrounded by hostile faces, his heart pounding, not with fear, but anticipation. The test had reached its peak, and what happened next would expose the liars, reward the righteous, and shake the entire empire to its core. Adam's first full week as a janitor felt longer than his entire university education. Each day began before sunrise, when the massive headquarters of El-Mansouri Group still slept in silence. As he pushed his cleaning cart through marble corridors that once echoed with his footsteps as chairman, he felt the weight of irony press heavily on his chest. The same elevators that once opened instantly for him now closed in his face. The same security guards who once saluted him now shouted, ordering him to wait. Adam observed everything carefully: how power reshaped people's voices, how status sharpened cruelty, how respect evaporated the moment someone believed you were beneath them. Every humiliation, every command, every mocking laugh etched itself into his memory like ink on stone. He reminded himself constantly: this pain is information. This suffering is truth. Supervisors took special pleasure in controlling him. One manager, notorious for his temper, seemed to enjoy summoning Adam repeatedly just to send him back where he came from. "Didn't I tell you to clean the West Wing?" he barked, only to change his mind minutes later. Others followed suit, using Adam as a tool to display dominance. Employees laughed openly, whispering insults about his intelligence, his appearance, and his silence. Some tossed trash deliberately at his feet. Others pretended he didn't exist. Adam learned quickly that invisibility could be louder than insults. Yet through it all, he never protested. He lowered his gaze, nodded respectfully, and complied. Inside, however, he was documenting every face, every tone, every injustice. The empire he inherited was rotting in places his father never saw.
During breaks, Adam often sat alone near the service entrance, eating quietly. That was when Laila began to appear regularly, carrying homemade food wrapped carefully in foil. She never asked questions, never pried. She simply sat nearby and spoke to him like a human being. She told him stories about her childhood, about how hard she worked to earn her position, about how she hated bullying of any kind. When others stared, she stared back until they looked away. Adam noticed how her presence alone changed the atmosphere, how insults softened, how mockery retreated. She had strength without shouting, courage without cruelty. To Adam, she became a living reminder that goodness still existed inside the walls of his company. One afternoon, an argument broke out when a senior staff member accused Adam of cleaning too slowly. The insults escalated quickly, harsh and unnecessary. Before Adam could respond, Laila stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "If you have a problem, address it respectfully," she said. "You don't degrade people to feel important." The room fell silent. No one expected her to defend a janitor. Adam saw something else then. Fear in the eyes of the abuser. Laila wasn't powerful by title, but she was powerful by integrity. That moment burned itself into Adam's heart. Without realizing it, she had passed a test she never knew existed. That evening, as Adam mopped floors long after most employees had gone home, he reflected deeply. He had seen arrogance dressed in suits, cruelty hidden behind authority, and kindness shining without reward. The company was no longer just a business. It was a battlefield of character. Adam knew now that his experiment was working, but he also sensed something darker approaching. Whispers were growing louder. Eyes followed him more closely. Suspicion lingered in the air. Somewhere inside the building, greed was preparing its move. And unknowingly, Adam was about to become the perfect scapegoat for a crime he did not commit. As the days turned into weeks, Adamu's life as a janitor settled into a painful rhythm that few would willingly endure. Every morning, he entered the towering headquarters unnoticed, blending into the background like dust on marble floors. The humiliation no longer shocked him, but it still wounded him in ways that were difficult to explain. People spoke about him as though he were not standing right there, complaining about his pace, his silence, and even his existence. Orders came relentlessly, layered one on top of another, often impossible to complete at once. Yet Adamu complied, not because he had to, but because he wanted to understand the hearts behind the voices. He learned quickly that some people found joy in cruelty, while others followed cruelty simply because it was normalized. Each insult added clarity to his growing list of truths. Despite the hostility surrounding him, Laila remained a constant source of warmth in an otherwise cold environment. She noticed the smallest details, how Adamu's hands trembled slightly from exhaustion, how he often skipped breaks to finish tasks faster, how he absorbed insults without reaction. Almost every day, she brought him food, sometimes a warm meal, sometimes just fruit and water, but always offered with genuine care. She never made him feel like a charity case. Instead, she spoke to him as an equal, asking about his day, listening when he spoke, and smiling in a way that reminded him of home. Adamu began to realize that true kindness was not loud, it was consistent. Word of Layla's behavior spread quietly through the office, and not everyone approved. Some co-workers mocked her behind her back, questioning why she defended a nobody. Others warned her that associating with janitors could harm her career. Yet, Layla remained unshaken. She believed dignity was not something granted by position, but something inherent in being human. When someone insulted Adam, she corrected them. When supervisors shouted, she asked them to speak respectfully. Her courage, though subtle, carried weight. Adam watched all this with growing admiration, feeling both grateful and conflicted. He wanted to protect her from the consequences of his experiment, yet he also knew her actions revealed exactly the kind of leader his company desperately needed.
Meanwhile, Adam noticed something unsettling. Certain managers were becoming increasingly hostile toward him. Their eyes followed him longer than necessary. Their voices sharpened when they addressed him. He sensed tension, not born of irritation, but of fear. It dawned on him that his quiet presence was inconvenient. His silence made them uncomfortable. He saw more than he spoke, and some people didn't like being observed. He overheard whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when he entered the room. Doors closed quickly behind him. Something was happening behind the scenes, something heavy with greed and desperation. Adam felt it in the air, thick and ominous.
One evening, as Adam cleaned near the executive offices, Lila approached him with concern in her eyes. She lowered her voice and told him to be careful. "People are talking," she said softly. "Some of them don't like you here." Adam thanked her, offering a gentle smile that concealed his growing unease. He knew now that his experiment had gone far enough. The truth was surfacing, but truth often provoked retaliation before revelation. As Adam pushed his cart down the dim corridor, unaware of how close danger truly was, fate was already setting the stage for a confrontation that would change everything.
By the time the third week arrived, Adam's presence in the building had become something of a dark joke among certain employees. They no longer hid their disdain. Instead, they flaunted it openly, using him as a convenient outlet for frustrations they could not express upward. He was ordered to clean the same hallway repeatedly, sent from one floor to another without reason, and scolded for tasks he had never been assigned. Laughter followed him like a shadow. Some employees snapped their fingers to summon him, others spoke to him as if he were a malfunctioning machine rather than a man. Adam felt the sting of every word, yet he kept his head bowed, reminding himself that leadership was meaningless if it did not understand suffering. Each humiliation deepened his resolve, even as it tested his limits. One afternoon, a group of mid-level managers cornered Adam near the supply room, criticizing his work loudly enough for others to hear. They accused him of being slow, careless, and unintelligent. One of them joked that janitors like him were replaceable dust. The words cut deeply, not because they were true, but because they were spoken with such ease. Adam noticed how others nearby smiled nervously or laughed along, afraid to stand out. He understood then how cruelty spreads, not through monsters, but through silence. Though anger simmered within him, he remained composed. His calm unsettled them more than any argument could have.
Layla witnessed much of this cruelty, and each time she intervened without hesitation. When someone mocked Adam, she corrected them firmly. When supervisors raised their voices, she asked them to lower their tone. Her bravery irritated those who thrived on dominance. Some began to view her as a problem, a woman who refused to know her place. Adam worried for her, knowing association with him might cost her dearly. Yet Layla seemed unconcerned. "If kindness costs me my job," she once said quietly, "then it's not a place worth walking in." Her words stayed with Adam long after she walked away. Behind closed doors, something darker was unfolding. Adam noticed discrepancies. Files moved, offices locked unusually late, financial conversations abruptly cut short when he passed. He saw senior staff members entering restricted offices together, their faces tense, their voices hushed. He sensed fear, not of exposure, but of loss of privilege, power, or something far more dangerous. Adam realized his silent presence had made him an unintentional witness, and witnesses, especially invisible ones, were often convenient targets. The thought unsettled him deeply, but he pressed on, knowing the truth was closer than ever.
That night, as Adam cleaned the executive wing alone, the building eerily quiet, he felt a heaviness in his chest he could not shake. He paused, leaning on his mop, staring at the glass walls reflecting his tired face. He had learned more about human nature in weeks than most leaders learned in a lifetime. Yet, he also knew the cost of this knowledge was rising. Somewhere in the shadows of the company he owned, greed was sharpening its claws.
And very soon, Adam would find himself standing alone at the center of an accusation designed to destroy him. As the days grew heavier with tension, Adam found himself drawing quiet strength from the one person who never treated him as invisible. Layla's kindness did not fade with familiarity. Instead, it deepened. She noticed when Adam's shoulders slumped from exhaustion and when his eyes revealed the weight of unspoken burdens. She never asked why he endured such treatment or why he never defended himself. She simply respected his silence. In a workplace ruled by arrogance, Layla moved with grace and confidence, her presence commanding attention without demanding it. People noticed her not only for her striking appearance and confident posture, but for the way she carried herself, with dignity that could not be shaken by gossip or intimidation. Adam often wondered how someone so warm could survive in an environment so cold, yet she did, day after day, standing firm against cruelty. During lunch breaks, Layla often sat beside Adam in quiet corners of the building where few others dared to go. She brought homemade meals, insisting that no one deserved to work on an empty stomach. The food was more than nourishment, it was care, comfort, and a reminder of humanity. She spoke to him about her dreams, about wanting to rise in the company, not through manipulation, but through integrity. She believed leadership meant lifting others, not stepping on them. Adam listened carefully, struck by how closely her values aligned with everything his father had taught him. In those moments, he wasn't the owner of a multi-billion-dollar empire or a disguised janitor. He was simply a man learning who he could trust. Layla's defense of Adam did not go unnoticed. Some colleagues began avoiding her, while others openly questioned her loyalty to the company's hierarchy. Supervisors warned her subtly to focus on her work and stop involving herself in unnecessary matters. Yet, she refused to back down. When insults were thrown, she responded calmly. When disrespect appeared, she confronted it directly. Her courage carried a quiet authority that unsettled those who relied on fear to control others. Adam felt torn, grateful for her support, but concerned about the consequences she might face for standing beside him. Still, Layla never wavered. If no one speaks, she once said softly, then cruelty becomes the rule. Adam began to see Layla as more than just a kind co-worker. She represented the soul of the company he wanted to build, one rooted in fairness, empathy, and courage. Watching her navigate office politics with honesty gave him hope that change was possible. At the same time, he noticed how certain managers watched both of them closely, their expressions filled with suspicion. The whispers grew louder. Adam sensed that Layla's association with him made her a target as well. He resolved silently that if his experiment ended badly, he would ensure she was protected. No test of loyalty was worth destroying an innocent person's future. One evening, as the building emptied and light dimmed, Layla stopped Adam in the hallway. Her voice was low, her eyes serious. "Be careful," she warned. "Something isn't right. I feel it." Adam thanked her, touched by her concern. As she walked away, he realized that fate was drawing them toward a turning point neither of them could avoid. The kindness that had sustained him would soon be tested by betrayal. And when the storm finally broke, it would reveal not only the truth about the company, but the true value of the hearts within it. The atmosphere inside El-Mansouri group shifted subtly but unmistakably, like the calm before a violent storm. Adam felt it the moment he stepped into the building each morning. The forced smiles, the sudden silences, the way conversations died the instant he walked past. He was no longer just ignored, he was watched. Certain managers tracked his movements with narrowed eyes, as if measuring his steps, timing his routines, memorizing his presence. Adam realized that invisibility had transformed into suspicion. He had become inconvenient, too quiet, too observant, too present in places where secrets breathed. As he cleaned offices late into the evening, he noticed files left open longer than usual, drawers hastily shut, and tension thick enough to taste. Somewhere within these walls, something dishonest was unfolding, and the people involved were growing desperate. Layla sensed the change too. She grew more cautious, choosing her words carefully, scanning rooms before speaking freely. During lunch, she leaned closer and spoke in hushed tones, warning Adam that certain executives were nervous. "They are afraid," she said quietly, "not of you, but of being exposed." Adam listened, his mind racing.
He began connecting fragments, late-night meetings, altered reports, missing signatures. He suspected financial manipulation, perhaps theft hidden beneath layers of authority. Yet what troubled him most was how easily blame could be redirected downward. In companies like this, guilt flowed toward the powerless. And Adam, disguised as a janitor, was the easiest target imaginable.
Despite the tension, Layla continued to bring Adam food, insisting he rest even when work piled up. Her kindness became a quiet rebellion against the cruelty around them. She defended him less openly now, not because she feared confrontation, but because she sensed danger. Still, her eyes never hardened, her voice never lost warmth. Adam admired her restraint as much as her courage. She understood when to speak and when silence carried greater protection. In her, Adam saw wisdom shaped by hardship, strength refined by empathy. He knew with certainty now, if leadership meant anything, it meant recognizing people like her. Late one night, Adam overheard raised voices from an executive office as he cleaned nearby. He froze, instinct sharpening. Names were mentioned, numbers, deadlines, fear. One voice trembled as it said, "If this gets out, we're finished." Another replied coldly, "Relax, we'll blame the cleaner. No one listens to janitors." Adam's blood ran cold. In that moment, the full weight of the plan revealed itself. He was not just witnessing corruption, he was being positioned as its scapegoat. He stepped away silently, heart pounding, realizing the danger had crossed from theoretical to immediate.
That night, Adam returned home restless, unable to sleep. He replayed every insult, every suspicious glance, every whispered conversation. The experiment had succeeded beyond expectation, but at a cost. The truth was exposed, but so was his vulnerability. Yet he felt no regret, only resolve. He knew what was coming, an accusation, a public humiliation, perhaps even dismissal. And still, he chose to stay silent, because the moment of revelation would be far more powerful than any premature defense. As dawn approached, Adam whispered to himself, "Let them make their move," unaware of just how close the trap already was to snapping shut. The next few days unfolded with an unsettling calm that made Adam more alert than ever. On the surface, everything appeared normal. Meetings continued, emails were sent, and executives laughed loudly in hallways as though nothing was wrong. But beneath that polished surface, tension simmered like a hidden fire. Adam noticed how certain managers now coordinated their schedules, how they gathered behind closed doors more frequently, and how their eyes followed him with barely concealed calculation. Their smiles had sharpened, not softened. He realized they were no longer merely uncomfortable with his presence. They were planning something. Power, when threatened, often responds with aggression disguised as procedure. Adam understood this well, and he braced himself for what was coming. The cruelty intensified, but it was more deliberate now. Tasks were assigned to Adam that placed him near sensitive offices and restricted areas, as if someone wanted his presence documented. Supervisors barked orders loudly, ensuring witnesses. "Make sure you clean that office properly," one manager said pointedly, loud enough for others to hear. Adam complied silently, aware that every step was being staged. He understood the strategy clearly. Proximity would become proof, and silence would be interpreted as guilt. The realization sent a chill through him, but he remained calm. The trap was being built carefully, and he intended to let it close fully.
Layla noticed the change immediately. She saw how Adam was suddenly being sent into places he had never been assigned before, how supervisors hovered nearby, pretending to supervise while actually observing. Her concern deepened into fear. During a brief moment alone, she warned him again. "They are setting you up," she whispered urgently. Adam met her eyes and nodded slowly. He wanted to tell her everything, to reveal who he truly was, but he held back. The truth would come soon enough, and revealing it too early might destroy the very proof he needed. Still, seeing fear in her eyes strengthened his resolve. Whatever happened next, she deserved justice as much as he did. Behind closed doors, the conspirators moved quickly.
missing funds were discovered, or rather, declared missing. Reports were adjusted, narratives rehearsed. The story was simple and cruel. A janitor with access to offices, no authority to question him, and no power to defend himself. Adam was perfect. No one would challenge the accusation. In their minds, the matter was already settled. They congratulated themselves quietly, believing they had secured their positions and silenced potential exposure. None of them realized that the very person they intended to destroy was the only one capable of destroying them in return.
As evening fell, Adam cleaned the executive floor one last time before the storm. The light reflected off the polished floors, and his own reflection stared back at him, calm, composed, unbroken. He knew the next chapter of this journey would be painful, public, and humiliating. But he also knew something else. Truth had weight, and when it finally dropped, it would crush every lie beneath it. With that thought steadying his heart, Adam pushed his cart forward, fully aware that the accusation was no longer a question of if, but when. The morning it happened began like any other, yet the air inside El-Mansouri group felt unusually tight, as though the building itself was holding its breath. Adam arrived early, pushing his cleaning cart through the quiet corridors while the city outside slowly awakened. Executives began arriving one by one, their polished shoes echoing against the marble floors. Then, without warning, panic rippled through the executive wing. Voices rose sharply, doors slammed open. A senior accountant rushed down the hallway, his face pale, clutching a folder as though it contained a live wire. Within minutes, whispers spread like wildfire. A large sum of money was missing from one of the company's most sensitive offices. What had been tension now turned into controlled chaos. Managers gathered quickly, pretending to be shocked while carefully masking their satisfaction. They demanded audits, reviewed security logs, and asked questions they already knew the answers to. Adam continued cleaning quietly nearby, every sense alert. He noticed how eyes suddenly shifted toward him, how conversations paused when he came too close. Soon, one voice, loud and deliberate, cut through the noise. Who was assigned to clean this office last night? The question hung heavily in the air. Silence followed. Then another manager answered calmly, "The janitor." Adam felt the shift instantly. The room no longer buzzed with confusion. It buzzed with certainty. The narrative had been chosen. Adam was summoned abruptly, escorted into a glass-walled meeting room where senior staff sat in judgment. No lawyer, no explanation, just accusation. They questioned him harshly, their voices layered with false concern and thinly veiled contempt. "Where were you last night? Why were you near the office? Do you understand how serious this is?" Adam answered respectfully, calmly, truthfully. He explained his assigned duties, his schedule, his routine, but his words bounced off walls already built with lies. Evidence was found. Timelines were confirmed. His silence over the past weeks was now twisted into guilt. The room watched him like predators who had finally cornered prey. Outside the meeting room, news spread quickly. Employees whispered, pointed, and stared. Some shook their heads in fake disappointment. Others smirked quietly. Only Layla stood frozen, her heart pounding as she listened from a distance. She knew this was wrong. She knew Adam. She stepped forward, insisting they were making a mistake, that Adam was being framed. Her protest was dismissed instantly. "Stay out of this," someone snapped. "You're letting emotions cloud your judgment." Layla felt helpless rage burn in her chest as she watched Adam being escorted away, his dignity intact, but his position hanging by a thread. As Adam sat alone in a holding office, waiting for what he already knew was coming, his thoughts were calm, almost serene. The trap had closed exactly as expected. He did not fear being fired. He did not fear humiliation. What he feared was how easily injustice had been embraced by those entrusted with power. Yet deep inside, he also felt something else: certainty. The final act was approaching. The truth no longer needed to hide. And somewhere far away, a plane was touching down, carrying a man whose presence will turn accusation into revelation and lies into ruins. Adam was escorted through the corridors as though he were already guilty, flanked by security guards whose faces showed neither hatred nor sympathy, only obedience. Employees paused in their work to watch him pass, some whispering, others pretending not to see. The humiliation was public and deliberate. He was taken to a conference room on the executive floor, a place where he once chaired meetings that shaped entire industries. Now, he sat alone at the far end of the long table, his janitor's uniform stacked against the polished leather chairs and framed portraits of corporate achievements. The irony was crushing, yet Adam remained composed. He folded his hands calmly and waited, knowing this moment was not about defense, it was about exposure. The managers filed in one by one, their expressions rehearsed with practiced authority. The head manager cleared his throat and began speaking in a tone heavy with false regret. He spoke of company policy, of zero tolerance, of how theft could not be ignored, regardless of position. Adam listened silently, as accusations were stacked neatly into a convincing speech. Security footage was referenced, logs were mentioned, and timelines conveniently aligned. Every word was designed not to seek truth, but to finalize a decision already made. Adam realized something chilling. They were eager. They wanted this over quickly, before questions could form, before doubt could breathe. When Adam was finally allowed to speak, the room leaned forward slightly, not with interest, but with expectation of a confession. Adam spoke calmly, respectfully, repeating the same truth he had already shared. He explained his duties, his movements, his consistency. He denied taking anything and refused to accuse anyone else. His composure irritated them. One manager slammed his hand on the table, accusing Adam of lying, reminding him that his position gave him no right to argue. Adam nodded quietly. Inside, he noted who shouted, who stayed silent, and who avoided eye contact. Silence, he knew, was often the loudest confession. Outside the room, Layla paced nervously, her hands clenched. She begged one supervisor to reconsider, insisting they investigate further, to review all footage, to check access logs properly. Her words fell on deaf ears. "You're too emotional," she was told. "This doesn't concern you." The dismissal cut deeply. Layla realized then how fragile fairness was in a system built on hierarchy. Still, she refused to walk away. She stayed, waiting, praying that truth would somehow surface before injustice was sealed. Inside the conference room, the verdict was delivered with cold finality. Adam was to be terminated immediately and handed over for further investigation. The head manager stood, signaling the end. "You're fired," he said firmly, as if announcing a routine procedure. Adam stood as well, meeting the man's eyes without anger or fear. At that exact moment, the doors behind them opened slowly, and footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Every head turned. The room fell silent. A familiar, commanding presence filled the space. And in that instant, everything they believed they controlled began to unravel. The heavy wooden doors of the conference room creaked open slowly, and every conversation died instantly. The sound of polished shoes against marble echoed with authority, measured and unhurried. The security guards straightened instinctively. The managers froze mid-motion. A tall figure stepped inside, dressed in an elegant travel suit, his presence commanding without a single word spoken. It was Hassan El-Mansouri, the founder, the man whose name built the walls they stood within. The room seemed to shrink around him. No one had expected his return. He had been scheduled to remain abroad for weeks, yet here he was, eyes sharp, expression unreadable, surveying the room with the calm intensity of a man who already sensed betrayal. Adam stood perfectly still, his heart steady, knowing the moment he had prepared for had finally arrived. Hassan's gaze moved slowly from face to face, lingering just long enough to unsettle everyone present. The head manager stammered, forcing a smile that collapsed almost instantly. "Sir, we weren't expecting." Hassan raised one hand, silencing him without a word. He then turned his attention to Adam, standing in janitor's uniform at the far end of the table. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in Hassan's eyes. Shock, recognition, disbelief. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold focus. He looked back at the managers. "Why?" Hassan asked calmly. "Is my company in chaos the moment I return?" His voice was not loud, but it carried a weight that pressed down on every chest in the room.
The head manager swallowed hard and rushed to explain, eager to regain control. He spoke of stolen money, company policy, and decisive leadership. He pointed towards Adam. "This janitor stole from the company. We were just about to finalize his termination," he said confidently, believing he was demonstrating efficiency. The room held its breath. Hassan's expression did not change. Instead, he took a slow step forward, his eyes never leaving the manager's face. "You were about to fire him?" Hassan asked quietly. The manager nodded, encouraged by what he assumed was approval. "Yes, sir. We cannot tolerate theft, especially from someone like him." Hassan turned fully towards Adam now, studying him from head to toe. The silence stretched painfully long. Then Hassan exhaled slowly and turned back to the room. "Do you know," he asked, "who you are trying to fire?" Confused glances were exchanged. Someone laughed nervously. "Sir, he is just a janitor," a manager replied. That was informing the lion it stood before prey. Hassan's eyes hardened. "Just a janitor?" he repeated. His voice dropped, dangerous and controlled. "Then tell me, how do you fire the owner of this company?" The words hit the room like an explosion. Chairs scraped, mouths fell open, blood drained from faces.
Shock rippled through the room violently. Some managers stood abruptly, others sat frozen, unable to process what they had just heard. Hassan stepped aside slightly and gestured toward Adam. "This," he said firmly, "is my son, Adam El-Mansouri, the chairman and sole owner of El-Mansouri Group." Gasps filled the air. The same people who had insulted, mocked, and accused Adam now stared at him in horror. Outside the room, Leila heard the commotion and rushed closer, her heart pounding. Inside, Adam removed his janitor's cap calmly and met the room's stunned faces with quiet resolve. The truth had arrived, and it was merciless.
The silence that followed Hassan's declaration was so deep it felt unreal, as though time itself had stalled. Faces drained of color, confidence collapsed into terror. The managers who moments earlier spoke with authority now avoided eye contact, their minds racing for explanations that could not exist. Adam stood calmly, no longer hiding, his posture unchanged yet transformed by truth. The janitor they had mocked was suddenly revealed as the man who owned everything they feared losing. Hassan watched them closely, allowing the weight of reality to sink in. He did not raise his voice, he did not accuse, he let their guilt speak for itself. In that silence, every insult, every lie, every cruel decision replayed in their memories with devastating clarity. The head manager stuttered, attempting to regain composure. Apologies spilled out clumsily, layered with excuses and claims of misunderstanding. Others joined in quickly, speaking over one another, desperate to distance themselves from responsibility. Hassan listened without interruption, his expression cold and unreadable. When the noise became unbearable, he lifted a hand. "Enough," he said firmly. "I didn't come back to hear excuses. I came back to see the truth." His eyes shifted to Adam. "Tell me what you saw," he said quietly. The room froze again. Adam took a breath and began to speak, not with anger, but with clarity, recounting the weeks of humiliation, the cruelty, the manipulation, and the moment he realized he was being framed.
As Adam spoke, the room transformed into a courtroom of conscience. Each word landed with precision, stripping away pretenses. He named no one directly, yet everyone knew who he meant. He spoke of silence being used as a weapon, of power abused casually, of kindness existing where no one expected it. Hassan listened carefully, his jaw tightening. When Adam finished, Hassan nodded slowly. "That is why I asked you to learn," he said, "and you learned well." He then turned back to the managers, his gaze sharp. "You failed this company," he said, "not because money went missing, but because character did." Outside the conference room, Leila stood trembling, tears threatening to spill. She had heard enough to understand what was happening, yet the magnitude of it overwhelmed her. The man she defended, the one she brought food to, the one she believed in, was the owner of the company. Her mind reeled. Inside the room, Hassan ordered an immediate lockdown of executive access, a full audit, and the suspension of several senior managers pending investigation. The authority in his voice left no room for resistance. Security moved swiftly. Panic turned into chaos,
as those who once wielded power felt it slip through their fingers.
As the meeting ended, Adam stepped out of the room, now dressed in truth, if not yet in his suit. Leila looked up at him, eyes wide with disbelief. Their gazes met, and for a moment, words failed them both. Adam offered a gentle, reassuring smile, the same one he had worn during his hardest days. The empire had just shaken to its core, but this was only the beginning. Justice had been summoned, and by morning, the company would wake to a new order, one built not on fear, but on integrity, tested by fire.
By the next morning, news of the previous day's events had spread through El-Mansouri group like wildfire. Whispers filled elevators, hallways buzzed with nervous speculation, and employees gathered in small clusters, replaying the shocking revelation again and again. The janitor they had ignored, mocked, and pitied was the honor of the entire empire. Adam arrived early, this time escorted respectfully by security, though he still wore simple clothes. He wanted one final look at the company as it truly was before stepping into the role everyone had denied him. Faces that once looked through him now stared openly, some filled with shame, others with fear. No one laughed anymore. Power had shifted, and everyone felt it. A full executive meeting was called before noon. The same managers who had spoken harshly to Adam now sat rigid in their seats, hands folded tightly, eyes lowered. Hassan entered first, followed closely by Adam. The atmosphere was suffocating. Hassan stood at the head of the table and spoke slowly, deliberately. He replayed the events of the accusation, repeating the manager's words exactly as they were spoken. "We were about to fire the janitor." Hassan paused, letting the sentence linger. Then he looked up, his gaze piercing. "You were not firing a janitor," he said coldly. "You were about to fire the owner of this company, my son." The room felt as though it might collapse under the weight of that truth.
Hassan then revealed the results of the overnight investigation. Financial records showed clear evidence of internal thefts. Money rerouted through hidden accounts tied directly to 2 senior executives and 1 department manager. Security footage confirmed unauthorized access after hours, none involving Adam. The truth unfolded piece by piece, stripping away every lie. One by one, the guilty lowered their heads, unable to deny the evidence. Hassan wasted no words. "You abused power. You humiliated the innocent. You tried to destroy what you feared," he said. "This company will not carry your corruption." With a firm gesture, he ordered their immediate dismissal and legal action. Adam watched silently as the consequences fell into place. There was no triumph in his expression, only resolve. When Hassan finished, he turned to Adam and stepped aside. "The company is yours," he said. "Lead it." Adam stepped forward, his voice calm but unwavering. He spoke not of revenge, but of values, respect, accountability, dignity at every level. He addressed the employees directly, reminding them that titles did not define worth, and silence in the face of cruelty was complicity. His words cut deeper than anger ever could, because they carried truth earned through suffering.
As the meeting ended, Adam's eyes found Leila standing quietly near the back of the room, still trying to process everything. Their gazes met again, this time with something new between them, understanding. She had defended him when he had nothing. She had believed when belief cost her safety. Adam knew then that leadership was not about standing alone at the top, but about recognizing those who stood firm when no reward was promised. And in that realization, the future of the empire quietly, irrevocably changed. The next morning, El-Mansouri Group awakened to a sight no one would ever forget. Adam arrived at headquarters dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit, his posture confident, his presence commanding. The janitor's uniform was gone, replaced by the unmistakable aura of leadership. Conversation stopped as he walked through the lobby. Employees stood instinctively, unsure whether to bow, greet, or simply stare. The same floors he had once scrubbed now reflected his polished shoes. Yet despite the transformation, Adam's eyes remained calm and observant, unchanged by clothing or recognition. He was not intoxicated by power,
He was focused by purpose. This was not a performance. It was a transition from truth learned in humility to authority exercised with intention. An emergency assembly was called in the main auditorium. Every department attended. Adam stood at the podium, the company logo glowing behind him like a symbol reclaimed. He addressed the staff clearly and without drama, announcing the immediate termination of those found guilty of stealing company funds and abusing authority. Names were read. Gasps echoed. Some of the accused tried to protest. Others lowered their heads in defeat. Adam did not raise his voice. He did not insult them. His restraint made the judgment heavier. This company will no longer reward fear, arrogance, or corruption, he said. You were trusted. You chose greed. With those words, careers built on intimidation collapsed in minutes.
Then, Adam did something no one expected. He spoke of his time as a janitor, not naming insults, but describing what it felt like to be unseen, disrespected, and dismissed. The room was silent, many unable to meet his gaze. If you treat people poorly when you think they have no power, he said, then you are unfit to hold any. His words echoed long after he paused. He announced new policies, open reporting, protection for lower-level staff, and leadership evaluations tied to character, not results alone. The empire was being restructured, not just financially, but morally. Finally, Adam called Lila's name. She froze, heart pounding, as hundreds of eyes turned toward her. Adam spoke with clarity and respect. He recounted her courage, her consistency, her refusal to stay silent in the face of cruelty. Leadership, he said, is not proven by titles, but by integrity under pressure. Then he made the announcement that stunned the room. Lila was being promoted to department manager, effective immediately. Applause erupted, hesitant at first, then thunderous. Lila stood in disbelief, tears in her eyes. She had never defended Adam for reward, yet reward had found her anyway.
As the assembly ended, employees left transformed. Some inspired, some fearful. All changed. Adam watched them go, knowing the real work was just beginning. Power had shifted hands, but more importantly, it had changed meaning. The company was no longer a place where fear ruled quietly from above. It was becoming something harder, stronger, and more human. And in the midst of that transformation stood two people whose lives had been forever altered, not by ambition, but by kindness proven when it mattered most.
In the days following the dramatic restructuring, the atmosphere inside El-Mansouri Group transformed in ways no memo could ever enforce. Fear-driven whispers slowly faded, replaced by cautious professionalism and a renewed sense of accountability. Employees who once ignored janitors now greeted them politely. Supervisors measured their words carefully. Respect, once selective and shallow, began to spread evenly across all levels of the company. Adam moved through the building quietly, observing the ripple effects of truth. He noticed how posture changed when he entered a room, not from fear, but from awareness. People were no longer performing for power. They were adjusting to responsibility. Adam knew culture did not change overnight, but the foundation had shifted. The empire was healing from the inside out. Layla's transition into her new role as department manager was both exhilarating and overwhelming. She was met with congratulations, but also with skeptical glances from those who questioned how quickly her rise had occurred. Still, she carried herself with the same dignity that had defined her before. She arrived early, stayed late, and listened carefully to her team. She refused to lead with intimidation, choosing instead to lead with clarity and fairness. Employees soon noticed that under her guidance, morale improved and productivity followed naturally. Adam observed this quietly, impressed but unsurprised. Layla had always been a leader. She simply hadn't been given permission to show it until now.
Their interactions changed subtly but meaningfully. Layla now entered Adam's office professionally, holding folders instead of food containers, her posture confident yet familiar. Still, there were moments when their eyes met, and the past lingered between them. Shared silence, shared endurance, shared truth. Adam treated her with the same respect he showed every manager, yet there was an unspoken understanding between them. She had seen him at his lowest, and he had seen her at her bravest. That bond was not romantic yet, but it was deep, rooted in something more durable than attraction. Adam often found himself reflecting, late at night, long after meetings ended. He thought about the version of himself who had scrubbed floors quietly, absorbing cruelty without protest. He realized that experience had reshaped him permanently. Power no longer tempted him. It humbled him. He knew now that leadership was not about being seen, but about seeing others. And in that realization, Layla's presence became more significant. She embodied the values he wanted the company and his life to reflect. Without realizing it fully, Adam began to look forward to the moment she walked into his office, not because of the reports she carried, but because of the calm she brought with her.
Layla, too, felt the shift. She respected Adam deeply, not just for what he owned, but for what he endured without bitterness. She noticed how he listened more than he spoke, how he valued honesty over flattery. Their conversations grew longer, drifting occasionally beyond work into reflections about life, values, and dreams. Neither rushed the connection, neither named it, but something unmistakable was forming, quiet, steady, and sincere. And as the company found its new balance, so too the two hearts that had met not through privilege, but through shared humanity.
The investigations that followed were swift, thorough, and impossible to ignore. Independent auditors combed through years of records, uncovering a web of deceit that reached deeper than anyone had imagined. Accounts had been quietly siphoned, expenses falsified, and authority abused to silence questions. Adam insisted the process remain transparent, refusing to interfere or soften outcomes. Justice loses meaning when it bends, he told the legal team. For many employees, this was the first time consequences felt real and impartial. The company watched as former executives, once untouchable, were escorted out, contracts terminated, reputations dismantled by their own actions. Adam did not celebrate. He understood that justice was not victory. It was restoration through truth. Some employees approached Adam privately, confessing their silence during the abuse he endured as a janitor. They apologized, ashamed that fear had kept them quiet. Adam listened without judgment. He thanked them for their honesty and reminded them that courage often grows after witnessing truth. He did not punish silence retroactively. Instead, he challenged everyone to choose differently moving forward. This balance, firm yet compassionate, began to define his leadership. People no longer followed him because he owned the company. They followed him because he made them feel seen, safe, and accountable at the same time.
Layla's department flourished under her steady guidance. She introduced clear workflows, encouraged open dialogue, and protected her team from intimidation. Adam noticed how people spoke freely around her, how problems surfaced early rather than being buried. One afternoon, during a review meeting, Adam publicly praised her work, not as a reward, but as recognition of consistency. Layla accepted it with grace, neither shrinking nor boasting. After the meeting, she thanked him privately. Their conversation lingered longer than necessary, filled with pauses that spoke more than words. Both felt it, the shift from professional admiration to something quietly personal. That evening, Adam invited Layla to walk with him through the building after hours. The halls were quiet, lights dimmed, the echoes of their footsteps soft against marble. He showed her the places where he had cleaned, where he had been insulted, where she had defended him. "This is where I learned who I was," he said softly. Layla listened, emotion in her eyes. She realized then how deeply the experience had marked him and how much strength it took to remain kind. In that shared silence, barriers fell away. They were no longer owner and manager, benefactor and beneficiary. They were two people who had faced the same storm from different sides. As they parted that night, something had changed. There was no declaration, no dramatic confession, only a deeper understanding and a mutual awareness that life had drawn them together for a reason. Justice had been served, not with cruelty, but with clarity. The company stood steadier, its values realigned. And in the quiet after the storm, Adam and Layla stood at the edge of a new beginning, one not defined by power or gratitude, but by trust earned when it mattered most. Weeks passed, and the company settled into a new rhythm: disciplined, transparent, and unexpectedly humane. Adam noticed how meetings had changed. People spoke with honesty rather than rehearsed flattery. Disagreements were resolved with data instead of dominance, and accountability felt shared instead of feared. In this new environment, Adam and Lila worked closely, often reviewing projects together long after others had left. Their collaboration was seamless. She anticipated challenges before they surfaced. He trusted her instincts without needing to assert authority. What began as professional efficiency slowly transformed into something warmer. Not rushed, not loud, just present. The kind of connection that grows in the quiet spaces between tasks, where trust becomes habit and respect becomes affection without announcement. One evening, as rain streaked the windows of Adam's office and the city lights blurred into gold, Lila lingered after submitting her reports. Their conversation drifted away from deadlines and projections toward memories and values. Adam spoke of his childhood in Rabat, the lessons his father taught him about dignity and patience. Lila shared stories of her early struggles, the times she chose integrity over convenience and paid for it in silence. As they spoke, the walls between them thinned. They were no longer careful with every word. Laughter found its way into the room, followed by thoughtful pauses that felt intimate rather than awkward. In that moment, both realized the connection had crossed an invisible line, still respectful but undeniably deeper.
The shift did not go unnoticed. Colleagues sensed a new alignment at the top, not favoritism, but harmony. Decisions were faster, more balanced. Where Adam brought vision, Leila brought grounding. Where Leila brought empathy, Adam reinforced structure. Together, they became a steady axis around which the company turned. Adam was careful, transparent in process, fair in recognition, aware that trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild. Leila, equally mindful, insisted on merit-based evaluations and clear boundaries. Their shared restraint only strengthened what was growing between them. Affection thrived precisely because it was not forced into the open. Outside the office, their conversations continued over quiet dinners, long walks, and shared reflections about purpose beyond success. Adam admitted that wealth had once insulated him from reality and that humility had been the greatest education of his life. Leila confessed how often she had doubted whether kindness mattered in a system that rewarded cruelty. Hearing each other speak so honestly felt like standing in open air after years indoors. There was comfort, but also courage, the courage to imagine a future that was both meaningful and shared. Neither spoke of love yet, but both felt its outline taking shape.
One night, as they parted under the soft glow of streetlights, Adam paused. "Whatever this becomes," he said gently, "I want it to be built the same way we rebuilt the company, on truth." Leila smiled, her answer simple and certain. "That's the only way I know how to live." In that exchange, partnership became personal, not through grand gestures, but through alignment of values. The company had found its balance, and two hearts, tested by humility and strengthened by trust, stood ready for the next chapter of their journey.
As the months unfolded, Adam began to realize that rebuilding the company had taken an immense toll, quietly, steadily, and deeply. The weight of leadership, the emotional reckoning of his disguise, and the responsibility of restoring trust had drained him more than any financial crisis ever could. One evening, after reviewing quarterly growth that exceeded expectations, Adam closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair, staring out over the city of Casablanca. For the first time since taking full control, he felt the need to step away, not to escape, but to reflect. He understood now why his father had traveled when the company was handed over. Distance, Adam realized, was sometimes the only way to see clearly, and there was only one person he trusted enough to share that space with. When Adam suggested a short vacation, officially framed as a leadership retreat, Leila was hesitant. She worried about perception, about gossip, about crossing lines too quickly. Adam listened carefully, respecting her concerns without pressure. He proposed transparency. The board would be informed, responsibilities delegated, timelines clearly set. Nothing hidden, nothing rushed. Leila admired that about him, the way he never demanded, only invited. After careful thought,
She agreed, not because of romance, but because she trusted his intentions. The decision itself marked growth for both of them. It wasn't about indulgence, it was about stepping into a future with clarity rather than fear.
Their journey took them first to Marrakesh, where history breathes through red walls and ancient streets. Away from the polished floors of the corporate world, Adam and Layla experienced a different rhythm of life. They walked through markets filled with color and voices, shared meals without agendas, and spoke openly without the weight of titles. Adam was no longer the owner, and Layla was no longer the manager. They were simply two people learning who they were without pressure watching their every move. In that freedom, their bond deepened, not through grand moments, but through shared laughter, thoughtful silence, and mutual respect. One evening, seated beneath lantern-lit skies, Adam finally spoke the words he had been carefully holding back. He told Layla how her kindness during his lowest days had changed him, how it had anchored him when everything else felt unstable. Layla listened quietly, emotion softening her expression. She admitted that standing up for him had never felt like a choice. It was simply who she was. Hearing that, Adam understood something profound. Love rooted in character was stronger than love born from admiration or rescue. There was no dramatic confession, no sudden promise, just honesty exchanged without fear.
As their retreat came to an end, both knew this was only the beginning. They returned to Casablanca, refreshed, aligned, and quietly transformed. The company felt different upon their return, stronger, steadier, more human. And within that structure, something personal had taken firm root. They had crossed a threshold, not into fantasy, but into intention. Whatever came next would be faced together, with the same integrity that had guided them from the beginning. And far beyond Morocco's borders, a future waited that neither of them had yet imagined.
Returning from their retreat, Adam and Layla stepped back into a company that felt watchful, not suspicious, but curious. Change had a momentum of its own, and people sensed that something significant had shifted at the top. Adam addressed the board with calm transparency, outlining progress, delegations, and next phase goals. He spoke of systems, not personalities, of values, not favors. Layla presented her department's results with clarity and confidence, answering questions with data and composure. The room responded with approval. What mattered most was not speculation about their closeness, but the undeniable evidence of performance. Trust, once fragile, was now reinforced by results that spoke louder than rumor. Outside the boardroom, whispers did circulate, as they always do when power and possibility intersect. Adam handled it the same way he handled everything else, by refusing to feed it. He maintained boundaries, insisted on process, and ensured decisions were documented and shared. Layla did the same, declining special treatment and holding herself to the highest standard. Their restraint changed the tone of the conversation. Curiosity softened into respect. People stopped asking questions because the answers were visible in the company's stability, growth, and morale. In a culture rebuilt on integrity, gossip struggled to survive.
One afternoon, Adam invited Layla for a quiet conversation, not in his office, but in a neutral meeting room with glass walls and open doors. He spoke honestly about the future, about how leadership would eventually draw public attention to their partnership if it became more than professional. He asked, not assumed. Layla appreciated the care in his words. She shared her own thoughts, her desire for clarity, her commitment to merit, her refusal to be defined by anyone else's shadow. What emerged was not a dramatic decision, but a mutual agreement. Whatever they chose would be intentional, visible, and grounded in shared values. It was then that Adam mentioned an invitation he had received, an international leadership summit in the United Kingdom, focused on ethical governance and corporate reform. He would be speaking about the lessons learned from rebuilding El-Mansouri Group. The organizers had also requested a senior manager to present operational reforms. Adam paused, meeting Layla's eyes. "I think it should be you," he said, not as a favor, but as recognition. Layla felt the weight of the moment. The invitation was professional, public, and significant. Accepting it would place her on a global stage, not beside Adam, but alongside him.
Layla accepted, not because of travel, not because of closeness, but because the work mattered. As preparations began, the company buzzed with anticipation. Employees saw something powerful taking shape.
leadership that elevated others, partnership that honored independence, and ambition guided by conscience. Adam and Layla stood at the edge of a new chapter, one that would carry their story beyond Morocco, into rooms where values were tested under brighter lights. And as the plane tickets were booked and speeches refined, both knew the journey ahead would reveal not just who they were to the world, but who they were to each other.
The flight to London felt surreal for both Adam and Layla. The city's skyline shimmered beneath a thin morning mist as their plane descended, signaling not just a physical journey, but a metaphorical one, far beyond the walls of El-Mansouri Group and the trials of the past months. Adam watched Layla as she reviewed her notes, poised and confident. He felt a surge of pride, not for the recognition they were about to receive, but for the integrity she had shown throughout every challenge. She had been his anchor in the storm, his unwavering presence when no one else dared to stand beside him. And now, as they prepared to address international leaders, that same presence felt intimate, personal, and profoundly grounding. The summit was a world away from Moroccan boardrooms, yet the lessons were universal. Adam spoke first, recounting the journey of rebuilding a multi-billion-dollar empire with honesty, humility, and accountability. His words carried power, not just because of wealth or title, but because of the authenticity he embodied, tested by the crucible of personal trial. When Layla followed, detailing operational reforms, ethics-driven leadership, and team empowerment, the audience responded with respect and admiration. Together, they were not only partners in work, but complementary forces that demonstrated how collaboration rooted in trust could inspire global change. Their synergy was palpable, and in the quiet pride of accomplishment, something more quietly surged between them.
After the summit, Adam and Layla walked along the Thames, the cold evening breeze carrying both excitement and reflection. London's lights danced in the water, each shimmer echoing moments of courage, struggle, and growth that had brought them here. Adam spoke softly. "We've built something stronger than a company. We've built a bond I never imagined before this journey." Layla's eyes softened, recognizing the unspoken meaning. She had been cautious, thoughtful, deliberate, but standing here now, the truth between them was undeniable. Their respect, trust, and shared adversity had transformed into something deeper, something neither hierarchy nor circumstance could define. That night, they celebrated modestly. No grand gestures, no public display, just the quiet understanding that life had aligned in an unexpected, perfect way. The recognition from the summit validated their professional achievements, but it was the personal acknowledgement that felt transformative. They spoke of dreams beyond titles, adventures in different countries, continued development of the company with ethical standards, and the simple joy of shared moments. Adam realized that wealth and power were merely tools. Purpose and connection were what gave life its weight. And Layla, who had once quietly defended him in hallways, now walked beside him as an equal, as a partner in life and ambition.
As the city slept under a blanket of mist and streetlights, Adam and Layla stood side by side, hands brushing lightly, neither needing to speak. The journey from Moroccan boardrooms, hidden janitorial shifts, betrayals, and tests of character had led them here, not just to success, but to each other. The future stretched ahead, filled with opportunities, challenges, and unknown adventures. And for the first time, both felt complete in the knowledge that they had faced every storm together, emerged stronger, and discovered something far more precious than power: love forged in trust, integrity, and shared resilience. Their story had ended, yet life's next chapter had just begun.